Yeah. Get out, that's it. Good evening, everyone. Okay, I don't apologize with you later starting, but as you can see, we're zooming this as well as streaming it tonight, so. If your family's watching, they'll see you on screen. Yeah, okay. What are we doing? We're starting the meeting. Welcome to Rockland County Rent Guideline Board meeting. Meeting number 2. Starting now at 7:10. Once again, I want to thank everyone for their attendance. There's quite a bit of information that's going to be imparted to us this evening, so if you would be quiet, that would be good. If you put your phones on silent, that would be even better. And given that, we're starting. Which one do you guys are doing?
I think Peter might be attendance or.
Okay, Peter.
Did you take the role, Chair, or do you want me to do that?
Oh, no, you haven't called.
Okay. Robert Van Dunk.
Here.
Kim Foskew.
Here.
Milagros Guzman.
Here.
Jordan Most.
Here.
Zachary Rothken.
Here.
Adam Blankfort.
Here.
And Chair Caldwell.
Yes.
And I do note, Chair, that Mr. Trotman is going to be following on the YouTube stream. He wasn't able to make it here tonight due to personal reasons.
All right, thank you. Now, we're ready for you to take away.
I did.
Is April? April?
April's not going to be here tonight, no.
Good evening, my name is Michael Langiuli. I work in the research and analysis unit at Homes and Community Renewal. This is my colleague Salvatore. So, if you want to start with table 1 of the tabulated results from the 2025 Rockland ETPA survey. Based on 16 buildings. We mailed out 36 notices to owners of buildings in Rockland County in February, putting them on notice that we'll be opening the portal on our website to start logging in using their user ID and password and entering their income and expenses. We also send out numerous emails throughout February, March, and April as reminders to owners that, look, you can still enter your data. If you haven't already, please do so. We try to get as large a response as possible. This is a very small sample. Rockland is one of the smaller ETPA counties. We mailed out 36 notices to owners and we received 17 responses. Of those 17 responses, we were able to tabulate 16 schedules. We give you 2 sets of tables. One is including a very large property, which we all know who it is. And we give a second set of tabulated results excluding the large property, since that property has over 500 units and can tilt the tables in either direction, especially in any income or expense category. Since it's such a small sample, one building can make a very large difference. So table 1, we tabulated 16 buildings, including the large property, which contains 1,735 units, of which 1,684 units were subject to the Emergency Tenant Protection Act, which gives us a 97% total of the tabulated units subject to the ETPA. Table 1 contains the actual dollars as reported. It's a 3-year survey, so the 2025 survey asks for income expenses for years 2022, 3, and 4. Table one, is the actual dollar amounts for all the categories. Remember, these are in thousands, so 2024, we have 27,012, which is 27 million, and so on going down. So table one are the actual dollar amounts as reported by the owners of these buildings. Moving on to table two. Table two indicates the categories of income and of expenses and what percentage of categories the owners spent the most amount of the money out of the 100% of their total expenses. And as you can see in 2024, real estate taxes comprise 21.5% of all expenses reported in the survey. Excluding interest and depreciation, repairs and maintenance would be the second largest expense, garnering 11.8%. Interest expenses did comprise 20.5% of all expenses as reported in 2024. And if you add up the whole column going down, from fuel all the way down to interest and depreciation, you come up with 100%, which comprise of all the expenses. These numbers are rounded, so if you actually add up the amount, actual dollars, you may not exactly total out 100%, but it's going to be off by maybe 1 or 2 tenths. So that's table two. Moving on to table three. This is the percent change of income and expenses, and we consider this one of the most indicative of the economic conditions in a particular county. And as you can see, in 2022 to 2023, total income increased at a rate of 1.4%. And then in the years 2023 to 2024, income again increased at a rate of 2.3%. Now we do expenses including and excluding interest and depreciation. So if you go down to the line where it says expenses excluding interest and depreciation in 2022, 2023, that number increased by 10.2%. And then expenses excluding interest and depreciation increased by another 6.2%. Total expenses, which includes increased interest and depreciation in 2022 to 2023, increased by 11.3% in 2022 to 2023, and then increased another 2.7% in 2023 to 2024. Interestingly, in the expense category, you would note that in 2023 to 2024, insurance expenses increased at the largest rate at 55.4%. Fuel expenses decreased at a rate of 20.9% also in that period. Management expenses decreased at a 12.2%. Real estate taxes increased at a rate of 15.5%. So this shows the rate of increase or decrease of interest and expense categories. So that's table three. Moving on to table four is the cash flow. Cash flow is excess income over expenses. So in 2024, we usually point to the number cash flow as a percent of income. Before depreciation, there was a 13.5% leftover income over expenses as reported in 2024. Income in actual dollars in 2024 was 27,012,000. When expenses before depreciation was 23,365, which was a leftover dollar amount of 3,647, which is a 13.5%. excess income over expenses. So that's how table 4 works. We call that the cash flow. So
There's a question. So that's not an increase of 13.5% from 2023. It's just a 2024.
no, it's not a rate of increase, no.
So it actually went down from the 2 years prior.
Slightly, yes.
It
Yes,
went slightly down from 23 to 24, and then a little bit more from 22 to 24, as you can see with the time. And then once, if you were to include depreciation, as you can see, there's obviously a loss if depreciation is included. But this is also including interest, just to let you know, as some of the other tables, you do have an exclusion of interest and depreciation. This particular table just shows before depreciation and after depreciation. And we have another table that we'll discuss after, which does both of those as well, and you kind of see something similar to the cash flow, which is also called cost to income ratio.
Can I ask you a silly question? Is depreciation considered property value? Or, no?
no, depreciation is just an accounting,
Okay.
feature. As like, if you do a capital increase on a building such as a new boiler or a new roof, you depreciate that particular capital improvement over a 27 or 28-year period. There's a accounting formula that is used. It's not an actual out-of-pocket expense.
Gotcha.
That's the reason why we do it, including and excluding, as the boards have requested over the years in all the other counties.
Thank you.
So we have 2 sets of data tables. So that was, the first data table included the large property. The second set is based on 15 buildings, which excludes the large 500 unit complex. Again, table 1 is just in dollars, the reported amounts. As you can see, it's excluding, I think it's 560 something units, so that's the difference. That particular unit built, that particular complex is 100% HEPA, that much we know. So in tables 2 and table 3, the same formulas are used. If you want to just compare table 2, including the large property and excluding the large property. Again, the real estate taxes encompass the largest expenditure of all expenses incurred by owners. Interest including, interest excluding the large property was slightly higher at an increase. That encompasses 26.9%. So there is a difference when you include or exclude that large property. That's why we supply this board with 2 sets of tables, including and excluding large property. Table 3, interestingly, based on the 16 buildings, including the large property, income increased at a rate of 2.3%. In 23-24, income excluding the large property increased at a lower percentage, at a lower rate of increase of 1.7%. Expenses excluding depreciation and interest were very similar at 6.2% increase compared to a 6.1% increase. Insurance, again, being the largest factor for owners of buildings in Rockland County, as garnering the largest share of expenses for all properties. And then table 4. Quite a difference in the cash flow, including the large property. The cash flow was higher at 13.5%, as opposed to 8.36%. This is before depreciation. I'm sorry, I should mention that. That's excluding the large property. So the larger property did have expenses, did drag it down a little bit. And it is a 500+ unit complex. So these tables are the actual dollars as reported, and any rates of increase and decreases actual dollars reported by the owners as submitted by the owners of the properties. Everything is scrutinized. We run various tables and various programs looking for any kind of errors or any kind of mistakes. We have the ability to return a schedule to an owner if we see that there's an obvious error, which sometimes owners do make errors. They add, like if an owner adds an extra digit on any kind of expense number, it can turn 100,000 into 1,000,000. So sometimes it stands out very obviously to us, and we have the ability to turn a schedule to an owner. We have it generates an email, and we ask for an explanation as to, can you just please verify that this number is correct? And if it is, just please explain why there is such a drastic rate of difference. And then we go on from there and we tabulate the results. So these are the actual tabulated results, including and excluding the large property in Rockland County.
Okay, quick, so.
Yeah.
But although like, if something stands out as it's obviously maybe like a mistype or something like that, but there's no per se like proof needed when they fill out the form. You don't need receipts.
We're not the IRS, so we're not actually doing an audit, but we can question an extreme increase or decrease in any category. And we just ask for like, hey, why did your utilities jump from, 25,000 to 175,000 1 year? Okay, we had a gas leak, we had something happen, we asked for an explanation. And that's what we need.
Okay, thank you.
Did you ask for an explanation on the insurance, John? That's huge.
Well, this is a very small sample as compared to.
That was my next
The other,
question. How many units are there that are subject to this law in total?
22,191 are registered currently for Rockland County, but Rockland County is a relatively small county compared to some of the other counties, so any kind of variation does affect these numbers, but we've seen across the board throughout all the counties that were anywhere from 20 to higher percent increases over the years over the 3-year period for insurance expenses. So it was common amongst all the counties in the ETPA counties.
Insurance was the highest
Rate of insurance.
rate of increase in all 4 Ecken counties.
Was this high though in the other jurisdictions?
This is much higher, but again, it's a very small sample. We're only talking about 15, 16 buildings as opposed to Westchester, where we tabulate over 400, Nassau, we tabulate 100. So 1 or 2 buildings with an extreme increase can tilt the tables. And we did get a couple of buildings that did give us an explanation. Yes, our insurance rates went up extremely high.
I mean, it looks like the Regency and the other buildings, because it's on both of these figures here, we're subject to that. huge
Yes.
jump. So,
Yes.
How many years did you say?
Total registered were 2,191. And we have within the 16 buildings, 1,684 that were tabulated.
So I guess one more question. You had said that there's 36 owners that got mailed the survey.
36 total buildings.
There's 36 build and 16 sent it in. 17 sent it.
17 responded.
17 responded, 1 got kicked back, right?
Yes.
So do you keep track of maybe consistently who's not completing the survey? If there's somebody year after year that's not doing it.
I mean, we do know, based upon, it being a relatively small population as well, we do keep track of everyone who has responded and then everyone who has not responded, yes. But we do know who has and hasn't responded.
And there's no repercussions to people who consistently don't respond?
We
I know
make,
you're not the IRS, I know.
yeah, I mean, we make extra efforts to call those property owners, like Mike said, we send multiple emails, we make phone calls if they're registered in the property, we have numbers and email addresses on file. And, last year there was an institution of a late registration. So if you did not file your registration for the property, owners will be implemented, certain fees and fines. So we do have more owners that are registering, but unfortunately, they're still not, complying with the survey. And it's really in the best, we say this all the time when owners call and they say, why should we fill out the survey? Well, it's in the best interest of the owners to file the survey, because if they want a fair and equitable increase for their property, then they should be filing the survey. You guys can come up with your own conclusions why they're not filing a survey. I really can't give you an answer, but, we make as much effort as we can to, have them fill out the survey.
Thank
You know,
you.
we make numerous phone calls, we'll highlight which owners haven't filed, we'll call them, we'll email them. We must send out 5, 6, 7 email blasts per cycle for all the counties. And we encourage all the owners, please file, you know. And we tell them you are required by the board to file a survey. That's our standard answer.
It's not just Rockland County, other counties have plenty of non-respondents as well.
Sure, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Vacancy, so, the next one, we look at this, the vacancy. Table. Which, this table. Is a report of of units that were reported. Have been vacated during the reporting period. Of 22, 23, and 24. And were re-rented to a new tenant. In year 2024. So. The first page is. 1 year lease terms. And if you go to the very bottom, if you see the number at the bottom, I don't know if it's kind of blocked out on the screen there. You can see the number 73. All the way at the very bottom.
Yeah.
So 73. Units. Of the tabulated buildings that were reported in our survey. 73 tenants vacated and were re-rented to a new tenant. And 73 tenants signed a 1 year vacancy lease.
I have a question. The annual registrations only reflect what a snapshot of each apartment was on April 1 of each year. So is this just the annual registration showing the vacancy on April 1?
Well, this is not registration data. This
It's
is
not
survey.
registration.
This is survey data, yes. So the way you read this table, can be a little confusing, but. The left side going down, when you see 0 to 499, 500 to 999, going down, that's the previous rent of the exiting tenant. The top line going across horizontally are the ranges of what the new tenant signed in the range of rent that they signed a vacancy lease. So for instance, if you look at the number 12, okay, so in the category of $1,000 to $14.99 going across to $1,000 to $14.99 going down, you see the number 12 there? That means 12 tenants vacated, left their apartments, and 12 tenants entered the apartment and signed a 1 year vacancy lease in the same rent range. $1,000 to $14.99. Going down to $1,500 to $19.99. You see the number 24. So 24 tenants exited in 22, 23, and 24. And 24 tenants coincidentally signed a vacancy lease in the same rent range. If you go up one unit. There's a number 1 there for 2,000 to 24.99. So one tenant signed a vacancy lease that was that the exiting tenant was $1,500 to $19.99, and the new tenant signed the lease in the 2,000 to $24.99 range. And that's how this table works. 2,000 to $24.99 going across, there's a number 9. So 9 tenants vacated and 9 tenants signed a 1 year vacancy lease in the same category, same range. Right? Yeah.
So there were no tenants who signed a vacancy lease who reported on the survey 2 year lease. So
2 year vacancy lease.
they were all 1 year leases. So if you flip on the other side, there would be all 0 there and the same thing. So there is 4 pages on this document. One is the ranges that Mike discussed, and then the 3rd and 4th pages are actually the percentage increases. So, which may be a little bit more clear because sometimes the ranges are hard to understand, but as you can see on that 3rd page, which states 1 year lease term, you see percentages, so you see there is a number 34 at the bottom, so there were 34 tenants that signed a lease. And it was a one-year lease, obviously, like we said, and it stayed under the percentage of under 5%. And reading across, you can see there were various tenants that did have some large increases from the exiting tenant to the new vacancy lease. So 5 to 9.9 was 3%, 10% to 14.9, there was one, and then so on and so forth, if you're reading the column above. And just like the first table shows, there were 73 tenants that vacated and then re-rented for a one-year lease term as the vacancy lease.
These are rents paid, so they're preferential rents that then went for legal rents.
These are actually legal regulated rent, so if you ask for the legal regulated rent on this tab, yeah.
Do you have data for the actual rents that the tenants paid?
So that would basically be like the rental income, right? So the owner is going to report the rental income, so the owner could have a legal regulated rent at $2,500, but if the owner's only collecting $2,000 a month, then for 12 months, it's only collecting $24,000, so it wouldn't show that on the rental income. The rental income shows the exact amount, which will be table 1 of
Right.
your tabs, yeah.
Yeah, so this doesn't really show what the,
Yes.
what was actually paid by tenants.
No, it does not.
Yeah, so legal regulated rents, yeah. We really have no reports that we can run to show preferential
Yeah,
rents.
just, I'm not lecturing my board members, but because I do this for a living, just explaining the difference between a legal regulated rent and preferential rent, if anybody doesn't know. Legal regulated rent is kind of this number that stands up there, and sometimes a landlord charges a lower rent, that's called a preferential rent, but every time that a tenant renews, you can only increase by the preferential rent, so the legal regulated rent may have increased by a certain percentage, but it doesn't mean that these are actually rents that the tenants paid, so it's not most conclusive. It probably does not match up anywhere close to the actual rental income here.
And remember, these are only vacancy leases, not lease renewals
Yeah.
on this particular table. These are all vacant tenants that left and were re-rented to new tenants. And like Sal said, in this 2025 survey, all the tenants that were reported signing vacancy leases, they all signed 1-year vacancy leases. Nobody took a 2-year vacancy lease.
You find that a phenomenon across the state, or just only Rockland County?
It varies, definitely, it varies, but I think even in Nassau last night, we had no 2-year leases, are very minimal, it's really dependent on, I guess, what the guidelines are sometimes, and also the turnover of the apartments, right? It really depends on the turnovers with the tenants, so it does vary. But there's definitely a larger percentage that sign 1-year leases than 2-year leases. That's very common, but I have none, it just depends on the owners that actually submit the surveys.
Because 73 vacant
Yes.
free rentals, and there's only 2,100 apartments, right?
Yes.
2,200, 2191.
Yeah, well,
That's a
this,
decent percentage, no, of turnover. I got it right.
Yeah, the majority of reported ones, I think came from the large properties.
Mhm.
Since they are over, it's a 500 plus
Unit.
unit property, so yeah.
Thank you.
yeah, also going back to page 1, I guess some of the things to notice was the median previous rent at the bottom. It was $14.79, and then after the vacancy, the median current rent is $1,690 or $1,690. So that's something we also, like to highlight with here. But as was stated before, these are the legal regulated rents. But we have a little mini paragraph here that I'll just refer to on this page. So I don't know if it's not sharing, but so yeah, so as we said, for the annual registration filings, there were 2,191 apartments in Rockland County. Of those, 50 were registered as vacant, 17 as temporarily exempt. Also, there were 3 apartments registered as permanently exempt. In addition, the average monthly legal regulated rent was $1,489, and that's across the board for Rockland County, regardless of the apartment size.
And that's registration records.
Yes, and that's registration.
That's not survey data, that's registration data. Okay. Plus they're coming. What's the income ratio? So, what's the income ratio is the percentage of, monies of order that they spend. The percentage of, income that is spent on. The percentage of, I'm gonna mix up here, the percentage of costs to income. Right, so.
Yeah, so how much the property spent, you know, based on the survey, how much. the
65.5%, yeah.
Spent on the property as compared to the income received on the property. Your two sides of this table, one side is including interest and depreciation, the other side is excluding interest and depreciation. And also, this is including total income, which may include some miscellaneous rental, obviously, and then some non-residential income. So as you can see, for 2024, when we're discussing including interest and depreciation, the percentage is 101.99 for the total sample, and when we remove the one property, it's 113.30. So that is showing a loss when we're including interest and depreciation. So basically, there was no excess income over expenses. The cost was higher than the income. And when we're looking at excluding interest and depreciation, which is the right side of the column on this table, for the total population of the 16 buildings, it was 65.57. And when we exclude the one property, it is 61.16. So from last year, there is a slight increase for the total population, as well as a slight increase for excluding the one particular large building.
Slight increase meaning more of a loss.
Yes, this is the inverse of the cash flow, so yeah, so there would be less money coming in as compared to the previous year.
The lower the number, the higher net. Yeah. Yeah, the one in the parentheses is for the less the large property, and the first number is including large property.
So as you can see, the number changes a little bit, but each side within that column is only just excluding that large property. But based upon the sample size, it's anywhere from, 13 to 18 buildings. So in case anyone was curious about those numbers, if you're kind of just looking up from, from 2008 through 2024. So depending on the sample size, it's always just minus that one large property.
Any questions?
It's 2009, correct?
That looks like that's probably not correct.
Yeah, it looks like a typo there.
Yeah.
Thank you for pointing that out. Okay. Yeah, that's definitely. It's not.
I think that pretty much wraps up our part of the presentation. If anybody has some questions or anything that we can assist with, feel free to ask a question, but I think that's it on our end.
So since 2008, the financial crisis, this is the largest loss year on year that these buildings are getting since 2008.
Well, I wouldn't call it the largest. I wouldn't call
Not
it
the largest loss,
yes, but
The
it's
largest,
The rate.
Yeah, yes. So basically, the inverse of this would be what's simply called as the net operating income, right? So basically what it's for the cash flow. Difference between the net operating income from here and the cash flow that we provide is the net operating income does exclude interest and depreciation, whereas our cash flow statement only excludes depreciation. So basically, the inverse of this would be, the inverse of this number would be synonymous with cash flow or not net operating income. So as Mr. Rothken said, this is definitely the lowest percentage of net operating income over the past few years. So yes, he was correct in making that statement.
So, you done sharing?
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else else have any questions or concerns at this time? Oh, I do have a question. I know last year, we initially had NIAC as a part of this. Is that still a part of these figures or NIAC no longer needs?
NIAC did opt out, shortly thereafter. This board did meet after they opted in, to go down the path of setting the initial guidelines. But thereafter, NIAC realized that they didn't actually have the correct, vacancy numbers and did opt out of stabilization.
Better picture of the areas for this. This is basically just Ramapo and.
House rules.
Spring Valley.
Spring Valley House.
Ramapo at Spring Valley.
Yeah.
And, House Straw, which is.
West Ham.
Thank you. Does have any other questions or discussions? Yeah, close the remarks.
I do have something to mention, but I guess I'll see if any of the board members want to say anything for your first question.
Am I able to ask a question for the audience?
Yes, but we're gonna, you wanna do that now, incorporate it in this meeting, or
Well-
close this and move on to that, or how do you wanna do it?
Yeah, I mean, we did update the public notice today to allow this board, if you want to take public comments, to do so. I think we should have people sign in and, we can keep the time.
I can't see right here. All right, yes, sir.
I'm Norman Hyman. I'd like to go to table 3 with the 16 schedules. The income is 2.3% for 2023 and 24. And the expenses are 6.2%. Following that is the interest depreciated 8.1%. Can you explain why the interest decreased 8.1%?
Chair, if I may, for the comments, the public hearing, I don't think it was contemplated to be a question and answer session with research and analysis. One of the board members can certainly take up that question if they want to ask. However, this is not something that's usually done with the other boards in the other ETPA counties where there's public questioning of the research and analysis unit. So just so that you're aware of that, if the speaker wants to make comments, they can certainly do that. But the question and answer session of the research and analysis unit is not usually something that happens.
Well, that question, one of the board members will address that question at some future time. Does anyone else have any other concerns they'd like to voice at this time? I know you had said you wanted to hear what were you here in time for the data?
It was not.
No, you missed it.
I came in about 5 or 10 minutes late.
Okay. So I know you had said you had some comments you wanted to make
I'll make them next Monday.
next Monday. Okay. All right. Yes. You look like you want to ask me something. No? Okay. Anyone have any other questions or concerns? If not,
Chair, I would like to make just 2 quick comments. If anyone in the audience or any of the board members do want to review either last night's meeting or tonight's meeting, we won't have transcripts available, but both of these meetings have streamed live to the Office of Rent Administration's YouTube page, and you can watch them. If you'd like to, I'll send everyone the link after the meeting. Secondly, the way that the ETPA boards are doing the explanatory statements is actually changing this year. This board is required under the ETPA to submit its findings to DHCR by July 1st of every year. Historically, this board and other boards have met in September for what's usually known as a certification meeting. Certification is not something that is required under the law, and it's something that we have been urging and working with the boards to eliminate that certification meeting. I note that Westchester, Kingston, I believe Nassau now, as well as the New York City Rent Guidelines Board are not doing this certification meeting. And it's really so that the boards are able to submit their findings to DHCR by July 1st every year. So for the new board members, this will probably be a foreign concept, but the board members that have been on the board for a while will remember that there's historically a certification meeting. We're recommending that doesn't take place as it's a unnecessary step that keeps this board from submitting the findings to DHCR by July 1st. So what we're doing instead is we've worked with research and analysis to get the explanatory statement available prior to the vote meeting that you all will have next Monday, with the idea that you'll be able to review it, make any changes, and accept and approve it alongside the guideline that you promulgate next week. So, I'll be here, April will be here, we can walk you through, how that should go. I can also send a video. The New York City Rent Guidelines Board has operated like this for years, and they seamlessly do a resolution at the end of their meetings where they say, we want to set this guideline and we want to adopt the explanatory statement while also directing staff to update it to put the new guidelines and any other information the board might request to be added before it's finalized. So I know that may go over the new board members' heads, but there's an explanatory statement that is required to be written up by law, which states the findings of the board. It also states the entire record, what you heard from research and analysis tonight. That's usually something that the board meets in September to accept and approve and pass. This year, it's being done as part of the June meetings for all of the boards, and we're proposing that is how Rockland operates going forward. I think that none of the other boards have voted on changing it. It's been pretty uncontroversial. I mean, the section of the ETPA that governs how the rent guidelines boards operate is pretty clear. One, in its lack of requirement of certification, and two, that the explanatory statement should be sent to DHCR by July 1st of each year. So, the board certainly can vote on it if somebody wants to make a motion, but yeah, it seems pretty clear from us reevaluating it over the last year that this is how the board should operate. So that's taken a little bit of extra work from research and analysis a little bit earlier, but so far, thank you guys for getting the explanatory statements done for Kingston and Westchester so far. So hopefully we'll be able to send that to you by the end of the week, and we'll work with them to make sure that happens.
So we'll have the data prior to.
Yeah, you'll have the draft explanatory statement before the vote meeting. And so one of the items for you to do, and it's already in the public notice, at the vote meeting will be to accept and approve the explanatory statement.
Right.
So those are my announcements, Chair.
Something you said about New York City. Didn't they have a problem with there this year and had to come back after the fact and make some changes or make some corrections?
I don't think that had anything to do with the explanatory statement.
Was the range?
Yeah, so this board also operates differently because the staff that New York City Rent Guidelines Board has, they work with them to develop an appropriate range for their guidelines every year. That's not something that happens in the ETPA counties. And so the reason why they came back and had to do what you're alluding to, Chair, was because there was a change in, the range requirements recommendation. So it had really nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Terrific. Any more questions and concerns? Hearing none? Once again, you're what the attorney just said in terms of decisions to be made next month, next week, Monday. And we'll be meeting in this room as well, well, we're meeting here at the library, 8 people will be in the meeting, we're not.
Sorry.
You will be notified at the door whether we're gonna go to the first floor or the third floor. We'll be here next Monday at 7 o'clock. And as you said, you could go online and look at all the data that was provided tonight, so if you have any other concerns, you can bring them up at that time. Thank you again for attending, everyone. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
The property moved in second to adjourn this meeting. Are there any questions? Hearing none,